Hi, hello, thank you for joining us today. This is one of a series of interviews that we carry out with different local organisations and people for Global Net 21 and Enfield Voices. Today I'm joined by Joe Ikhelef, who is the Chief Executive of Enfield Voluntary Action. This is a live streamed interview. Hopefully nothing will go wrong, but what it does mean is if you have any questions for Joe, you can type them, preferably on the Global Net page, so that we can see them and we can ask them to Joe on your behalf. So hi Joe, thank you for joining me today. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about Enfield Voluntary Action, or EVA?
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me on to Enfield Voices. It's great to be talking today. I'll tell you a bit about Enfield Voluntary Action. So it was started in 1991, so 27 years ago, and we support voluntary and community organisations in Enfield. We currently have 800 organisations on our database, so that's quite surprising in itself to some people about how many groups there are just in the London Borough of Enfield. They range from bigger organisations that most people will have heard of, such as Age Concerned, Mind, MenCap, the Citizens Advice, and those sorts of bigger organisations. But it also has many small organisations, including sports groups and children's groups, after school clubs. So loads and loads of different organisations in Enfield. So what we do is we have a number of functions at EVA. The first being our Volunteer Centre. That a lot of people will be quite familiar with what a volunteer centre does. It matches up residents to opportunities. We also have our funding and advice service. So that helps organisations to apply for funds, to set up their plans and projects, and to gain some resources to run their projects. And we also have a community accountancy project who helps organisations be compliant. I suppose a lot of people might be surprised how much legislation charities have to deal with in terms of fundraising, codes and finance reporting. So there's lots of different things that the community accountancy helps with. We have our EVA News, which is sent out to about 750 organisations with relevant stories and news about what's going on for voluntary organisations in the community. And then we do strategic representation, where we represent the needs of communities and voluntary groups with council health bodies. So that's the sort of our basic services.
It's a very wide-ranging remit that you've got. How do you think, so you've been going a long time, I'm assuming you haven't been involved in it since 1991, but how do you think it's developed in terms of the services that or the support that you do give voluntary organisations since it was founded in 1991? Presumably there was a need that was seen at that time. How do you think that need has changed, or has it changed?
It has changed. It changes every year. So the needs of people does change. The population, as the population changes, it becomes more diverse. As new issues emerge, so the issue which is really around, one of the issues around at the moment is really recognising loneliness, and how so obviously how voluntary groups connect to lonely people. So the challenge becomes, how do you know who's lonely if you can't find them, if they're not in touch with you? So the voluntary sector is always finding new problems, new issues to deal with. So the way that they need to do that, the methods they need to take will change over time. The way we deliver support changes. We've always seen ourselves as an organisation that listens and connects to people and asks them for regular feedback on how things are doing. And we did a survey this year. We got 101 responses, and it was quite a thorough needs assessment of the voluntary sector. So we've revised our services based on those. So we're always looking to react to what people want, but also to lead people towards where we think they're going to gain access to resources that they need.
Yeah. So were there any surprises that came out of that survey?
Not so many big surprises. Part of it was a satisfaction survey to see how people were happy with certain services, which was all very positive. But we asked in more detail about, if we ran types of event, what kind of events would you like to see? And so our events have been based on those results, and because that's how we tell organisations they have to do their work, based on assessing needs.
Yeah.
So that's how we do ours, and show them very transparently, this is how we run our organisation, this is how you need to run your services. Not just assume what people want, but actually ask people what they need.
That's a really, really good point, and that's really important for people who are running charities and organisations to take on board, because obviously if you just sort of do it one way because that's the way you've always done it, then the need might well have changed. So tell me about something. It was quite exciting that you did last, was it June? It was June, wasn't it?
Yes, it was,
summer, at 40 Hall. I hadn't seen you do anything like that before, but you had quite a sort of community event, didn't you? What did actually put in that on, and what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, that was a very positive event. We spend a lot of our time in offices working with people who know us very well, but we don't get out too much, and that was part of the feedback we were getting, that we don't know, people didn't see us as relevant to everyone, just the individuals that we're working with. So we arranged this day primarily to celebrate the amazing work that goes on. The problem with the voluntary sector is that it's everywhere around us, but it's so hidden and undervalued. So what we wanted to do was to take a day where we go out into our beautiful surroundings, 40 Hall, and actually celebrate the good work. It's getting more and more difficult for people to carry on in the circumstances. It's getting very difficult to run voluntary groups with the lack of funding and the pressures of even on individuals, of their family life, and all kinds of pressures. So to actually celebrate people, and our themes for the day were inspiration, innovation and inclusion, which we think summarise what the voluntary sector does. People inspire other people to do wonderful things. It's very inclusive. We're a very diverse range of individuals running these organisations, and we need to constantly come up with innovative new ideas to survive. So that's why we chose those three areas. We also wanted to value the role of young people in community, so that's why we had, in all categories, we had an under 25 category, and we thought it was very important that they got recognised for their good work, because there's too much negativity around, the stereotypical young person, so we wanted to put some positive information about young people.
Yeah, no, and do you plan to make that a regular event?
We would love to. Everything we do, of course, is depends on funding, because we're an independent charity, so we have to fundraise for all our events. That was funded by the big lottery this year, so we're hoping that through some more fundraising applications going off, we can make that an annual thing. That's what we're planning to do.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that'd be really good. So you touched there on the difficulty that organisations face in the current climate of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I guess austerity and a sort of wider lack of funding. What would be, we don't have that well-worn phrase, magic money tree. We don't have one of those, famously. What would be I suppose you're asked from decision makers, if we accept that funding is going to be low on the ground for a while, what else can they offer, and what else can people do that make a big difference to the voluntary sector, do you think?
Yeah, it is difficult, because to really make a difference in any of these big issues that we have, whether it's, you know, problems with youth crime, whether it's loneliness, whether it's aging population, and all these pressures, really to get the answer is from really it's asking the voluntary organisations really do have a lot of the solutions, but they can't run those projects without funding. So what I'd really like to say to any decision makers is really to try and make that leap of faith to looking at early intervention and prevention, because a lot of the budgets go straight into dealing with people in crisis, because over time those early intervention and prevention projects have just come to an end, and that's why problems are escalating. So it's about saying just divert some of your funds into stopping the problems happening, which is far cheaper than dealing with somebody in crisis later down the line. So yeah, I'd like to be able to say that there is something we can do without funding, and there are certain things that can happen without funding, but they still need coordinating. They still need to bring people together. You can't just have volunteers are great, but they need to be supervised. They need to have DBS checks. They need to be sustainable volunteers. They need to be managed and have their expectations matched to the host. So even free things cost. And it depends. In some areas you may be able to bring people together and say, okay, I for example do sometimes I go to a running group, and that's completely free of charge. It's organised by local people, no money exchanges hands, that's fine. But when you're looking at when you're working with vulnerable, disadvantaged communities, they don't have, if you say, okay, let's set up something, where's it going to run from? Even if you found somewhere for that place to run from for free, you need access to that place. Even in that instance, you would need a plan, you would need a budget, you would need to be able to charge people a certain amount of money, you would need insurance, you would need some resources. These things can't always happen completely free of charge. It would be great if they could, but often when you're dealing with, as I say, with vulnerable people, that small investment into prevention and coping will save so much money later down the line if situations spiral out of control. So it's worth that bit of investment. So I'd say.
Thank you. So changing tack slightly, we've had a question from one of our listeners. Who wondered how Enfield, or how we think Enfield might compare to other areas in terms of its voluntary sector. I don't know how there are other sort of voluntary action groups, aren't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
And I presume that you have you talk to them.
Yeah.
How does Enfield compare?
I think, well, yes, because I meet with all the CVS, called Council for Voluntary Service. I meet with all of the different CVSs across London, and we work in partnership on various projects from time to time. Yeah, each area, of course, is unique. That's why we work on the basis that local knows its own needs, and we have we have a very divided borough, as you probably know. So the eastern side of Enfield is very similar to the corridor going down to Tottenham in terms of the makeup of the voluntary sector, and then of course you've got the west of the borough, where you've got different types of organisations, but I'd say in terms I mean, all voluntary organisations face the similar issues. It's just for our borough, I think sometimes we're not recognised as having some of the problems we have, because if you take some of our statistics as an average, we don't look that bad, but some of the inequalities in Enfield are so great. So that the 9-year life expectancy difference in life expectancy between east and west, and some of the numbers of children living in poverty is so great. 1 in 3 workers are below the living wage in Enfield. So we have, I think the difference of Enfield is that we have quite a lot of inequalities, which is why we need community or social or voluntary action to address those needs. And I think we've in terms of our relationship with the council, it's always been quite positive. We've always had support from the council in terms of their recognition that the voluntary sector is important to their important partner to them. So we just hope that continues as well.
I think, I mean, we do seem to, I don't know what it's like in other boroughs, because I've only ever worked in the voluntary sector in Enfield, but we do seem to have a very rich voluntary sector, lots of excellent groups that people can join, lots of sort of whatever your interest is. It does seem like there is something that you can do with your spare time. Although going back to the difficulties, I guess, facing voluntary organisations, people have said to me that there is now a quite difference in terms of I suppose the demographics of people who are coming forward and volunteering, because a lot of the speaking generalisation here, but a lot of these slightly older women who would have, I suppose, been looking for something to do when their kids are at school, they're working now, or if they're older, then they're looking after the children, their grandchildren. Have you noticed that, and is that something that that other organisations have had to deal with, and how? I mean, presumably other groups are coming forward to take those spaces, I guess, or is it a difficulty that we're having to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's in terms of who makes up the volunteers that come forward. I mean, volunteers come from quite a wide range of different backgrounds, and people are motivated by very different things. So, so for example, young people are very much attracted by something that will be fun and enjoyable to what their interests are, whereas you get a large proportion of volunteers of older people, mainly around sort of retirement age or a bit before, which is very much about the purpose of their volunteering, what it leads to, what the end goals are. So you've got different activities and different purposes will motivate people in different ways, really, it's for any sort of volunteering, it's thinking about what that volunteer will gain through the volunteering, and that will vary very much from person to person, which is why we have this volunteer centre, which actually will do a questionnaire of what their interests are and what motivates them, and then again from the host about what type of person they're looking for. If you don't do that process, then people just turn up to things and then they feel they're wasting their time. So it's about matching expectations. So there's a variety of different volunteers from different demographics, and everybody, and a lot of people now are looking for volunteering as a employability perspective. So people want to gain experience to put on their CV, to get them into different work. From one of our parents program that we ran, many of the parents got work, but because one of the things they were missing, they said they told us that the 3 reasons that they weren't getting into work was confidence, childcare, and the cost of courses. So we ran a parent program which with a creche that was free for the training, and that really built their confidence, and many of them got jobs. So it's really looking at the barriers of why people can't achieve what they want to achieve, and sometimes volunteering will help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we use volunteers in the organisation where I work, and they do tend to be people who are looking for that bit of experience. Often they've got qualifications in whatever it is that they want to do. But without that experience, they find it very difficult to be given that chance. And obviously that is something that volunteering can really help with. Do you work with organisations like the DWP, helping people to get that work experience into?
Yes, we work with a range of agencies, including DWP. We've run grant programs for DWP in the past. We work with ESF, funding for training and employment support, and our volunteer centre works on we run employability workshops for volunteers that want to get into work, to sort of help them make the most of volunteering. So we do support people in terms of volunteering and employability.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing is there's sort of almost 2 sides to what you do. There's this sort of the support for the volunteers and the work that you do with the volunteers to make sure that they that the placement that they go into is a positive thing, and then obviously there's the work that you do with the voluntary sector, the organisations, the community groups. That I suppose without both of those, then we wouldn't be able to function. Well, we wouldn't be able to function as groups either. So. In terms of going back to what we said about young people, and do you think there is, this is quite a specific question, so do you think that, so I think we've seen some stuff on social media about children going into work not work obviously, but joining up with old people's homes and sort of those initiatives that match the elderly with children and with schools and nurseries in their area. And I guess that probably goes back to what you were saying about loneliness being an issue. Do you see that kind of programme growing and gaining in popularity?
Yes, I've seen over the years, because I've been in Enfield, at EVA for 11 years, and I've seen a number of intergenerational projects, and they've been around for a while, and I've seen some brilliant projects and some brilliant outcomes. I think it's always very positive to get the intergenerational gap reduced if we can. It's also I've seen a lot of family learning projects as well, which it's slightly different. It's more within the family, bringing, because it can be an issue in some communities where you've got the families have been migrants from various countries, and their children have been born or brought up here, and actually there's a disconnect within the family between generations, so they, to the point where they may even be speaking completely different languages and not connecting. So yes, I think any kind of project which brings together people of any sort is positive. So if you get, I've seen projects where you've had younger people teaching older people how to use, technology, which is great. And I've also seen, and then the older people doing oral history projects where they can tell young people about their their heritage and their culture and where they've come from. So these kind of, and then you've got the family learning projects where you've got, you know, younger parents teaching their parents how to look up things on the internet, and then the parents doing storytelling. So there's some brilliant stories, some brilliant projects, and this does benefit everyone. This is the thing, it's very specifically, of course, you can see how that benefits the younger person, it benefits the older person, but it benefits the whole community, because you're dealing with some of the big problems which cause crime, which cause isolation, which cause health problems. So if you can help those people, then you're helping society as a whole. So I think they're great projects.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's a very important project, I think. Okay, so another quite specific question. This is about, I suppose, might be about the changing nature of work or volunteering. So one of the contributors is asking, do many people volunteer at weekends? And if so, what kind of voluntary work can they get involved in, I suppose specifically at weekends? Because I know a lot of these organisations, like mine, we're sort of, you know, traditional office hours kinds of thing. What can people do outside of that if they've got a bit of spare time on the weekends?
Yeah, there are. There's opportunities to volunteer all the times. It would depend on the what the organisation is running and who it's running for. So obviously what springs to mind is I've spent a lot of time working with supplementary schools over the years. So there's schools run by organisations but out of school hours. So they can be in the evenings, or many of them are on Saturdays and Sundays. So the schools open up and a community group will go in and teach different, and they tend to be run by, it could be on a language or a religion or a culture, or we've got many of those in Enfield which teach different languages and cultures. So there's this one, or but there's other activities, sports groups, sometimes there's trips at weekends and social events, and so yeah, there are opportunities to volunteer at any time of the day or any day of the week.
Yeah, so I remember when I was at school, there used to be Greek school on a Saturday morning at my old school, and I was always wanted to go to that, but never got the opportunity. I don't know what I would have done at Greek school. Okay, so going on to one of the specific things that you guys do in helping organisations to look after their volunteers, I guess, because that's you know, supporting us to support our volunteers. In terms of rewarding those volunteers, I know that you organise trips and opportunities to do things as a group. I'm being asked specifically about the 100 hours awards and scheme. How important are things like that?
Oh yes, the 100 hours is very important. That's organised by mainly by the Enfield Council, but we're involved in promoting it, and it's wonderful because people can build up. Again, it's something people can build up, and at the end of it, they can just feel proud that they've done it. It's a mark of recognition, and again, it looks great on the CV. If you've done 100 hours of volunteering, it sounds so much. If you're involved in a voluntary group, you tend 100 hours goes quite quickly, but it sounds good, and it's nice to go to the council and get that recognition and be rewarded with something, a certificate. So I do think it's important. I think EVA is really trying now to spend a bit more time recognising and valuing what amazing work is being done, because if we don't do that, as I say, it's getting harder and harder, and if we don't recognise, then people will stop doing the amazing work, and the problems are not going to disappear. The problems, you know, the demand on voluntary organisations for help from people is increasing. So we have to do everything we can to try and motivate people and show that their work is valued, because some people will access a voluntary organisation and not even realise it's actually a voluntary organisation. They may just think it's a service which is being provided, and that people aren't putting their time and energy into it. So people need to have that recognition to feel valued. Otherwise, they won't continue.
Yeah, and I've seen you also do trips to the to Parliament.
Yes, we do trips to Parliament and Victoria and Albert Museum. So yeah, we try and celebrate and reward the volunteers with trips and things like that. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. So I have when I was sort of reading up on EVA and all the things that you do, I saw that you've got quite an interesting sounding project around health champions.
Yes, we health champions. So we there's a recognition, there's a national qualification in becoming a health champion now, which involves 4 days training where you become you learn various different skills on how to make every message count. Where you so basically the health champions from EVA are members of staff of voluntary organisations that are able to give health messages to people on a regular basis, so that they can help people improve their lifestyle changes. Lifestyle changes account, so if you take into account smoking, being overweight and lack of physical activity, that accounts for the 4 biggest killers in Enfield, which actually accounts for 70% of deaths in Enfield. So those kind of issues cannot be dealt with by a doctor in a 10-minute consultation. So the health champions can give out healthy messages, and the reason why that's so important is because if you think about it, we only really take advice from people that are trusted sources of information. Well, most people, and we so some of the more vulnerable communities, say with a language barrier, that maybe don't go to health professionals on a regular basis. Where are they getting their sources of information from? Mainly they're through the voluntary organisations. So if they're trained up as health champions and able to give these healthy messages, for example, on how much, let's say, a Sugar Smart the initiative, where you look at the amount of sugar there is in a children's drink, and then you're talking about obesity in children. Well, a lot of the problems of obesity in children is not knowing what's in food and not getting children exercising. And so I think having health champions in trusted positions within the community giving out healthy messages is a really, really positive step to improving lifestyles in this borough. So it's something which we really want to promote and build on as a network. And we think it's a good model. Of course, all good models need funding, but so yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that.
And how can organisations, just quickly, because I'm being told that we have to finish up soon,
right, okay.
Which is a shame because I could speak to you all day. But so how can organisations get involved in that particular project? Well,
just to contact EVA at the moment, we don't have, as I say, we had some funding to set this up, but we need to again, being an independent charity, we need to fundraise to be able to train more health champions. So at the moment we're in the application process and try and secure something. As in all of our projects, these things take time. But yeah, no, it's a good project.
It does certainly
so
sound
do
like
contact us and we'll put you on a waiting list.
Fantastic. It does sound like it would save a lot of money for public health.
It would, yeah.
All the agencies involved. Finally, do you want to what's next for EVA? What projects have you got in the pipeline? Where do you see the future of the voluntary sector in Enfield?
So yes, we another of our projects, which is very exciting, which we're doing over the next 3 years, is our parent programme, where we set up stay and play groups. We go through a 10-week programme of setting, training parents to set up their own stay and play groups. We can run that in schools, in charities, in children's centres. So we've got those programmes which are very successful. Health champions we hope to see more of. Social prescribing is obviously a very big opportunity for the voluntary sector to really make a difference to communities' lives. We want to bring our diverse groups together, more partnership, more celebration. So yeah, it's a hard time, but we're hoping to do what we can with the resources we've got, and keep bringing, helping organisations attract funding, bring more funding into Enfield, so that we can do more and more community projects.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you for the work that EVA does. And obviously, if organisations want to join EVA or want to get involved in any of their projects or sign up for the news, then the EVA website is eva.org.
Yeah, it's enfieldva.org.uk, and then you can find our services from there.
Thank you, Joan.
Brilliant. Thank you very much then. Thank you.